All right, welcome back, friends. We're going to read chapter 8 today. But before we do, I just wanted us to take a look at our signpost chart here and remind ourselves of the signposts that we've learned so far. So we've learned about memory moments, and we've also learned about again and again, meaning when something repeats often, we want to stop and take notice of that. And then our third one that we've learned so far is called contrast and contradiction. So when someone acts in a different way than we usually expect, that's when we take notice of it. All right, so we're going to start chapter 8. I'm looking here at my notes. I might want to add to this one later on in the book where I'm thinking about similarities between Rob and Sistine. So I'm actually going to go to the other page to set that up for my chapter 8, just to leave myself some space because I notice sometimes I want to go back. So chapter 8. And today is 10/7. Okay. All right. Chapter 8. His father read the note from the principal slowly, putting his big finger under the words as if they were bugs he was trying to keep still. When he was finally done, he laid the letter on the table and rubbed his eyes with his fingers and sighed. The rain beat a sad rhythm on the roof of the motel. Pause, guys. Have you noticed that many times in this book so far that it has been raining? Let's write this down super quick. Again and again, rain. The weather continues to be rainy. I wonder why. Okay. The rain beat a sad rhythm on the roof of the motel. That stuff ain't nothing anybody else can catch, his father said. I know it, Rob told him. I already told that to the principal once before. I called up there and told him that. Yes, sir, said Rob. His father sighed. He stopped rubbing his eyes and looked up at Rob. You want to stay home? He asked. Rob nodded. His father sighed again. Maybe I'll make an appointment. Get one of them doctors to write down that what you got ain't catching, all right? Yes, sir, said Rob. But I won't do it for a few days. I'll give you some time off. That would be all right, said Rob. Hold on, guys. Readers, so would your parents let you stay home from school if you weren't actually sick? Not really, right? Probably not mine. They'd say, you need to go to school, right? But Dad's gonna let Rob stay home. Interesting. You gotta fight them, them boys. I know you don't want to, but you've got to fight them, else they won't ever leave you alone. So see, Dad actually knows that Rob's getting bullied. Rob nodded. He saw Sistine twirling and punching and kicking, and the vision made him smile. In the meantime, you can help me out around here, his father said. Do some of the maintenance work at the motel. Do some sweeping and cleaning for me. Beauchamp's running me ragged. There ain't enough hours in the day to do everything that man wants done. Now go on and hand me that medicine. His father slathered and slapped the fishy-smelling ointment on Rob's legs, and Rob concentrated on holding still. Do you think Beauchamp is the richest man in the world? He asked his father. You guys, what do you think? Do you think that a man that owns a motel is the richest man in the world? Probably not, right? Nah, said his father. He don't own but this one itty-bitty motel now. And the woods. He just likes to pretend he's rich is all. Why? I was just wondering, said Rob. He was thinking about the tiger pacing back and forth in the cage. He was certain that the tiger belonged to Beauchamp. And wouldn't you have to be the richest man in the world to own a tiger? Rob wanted desperately to go see the tiger again. But he was afraid that he had imagined the whole thing. He was afraid that the tiger might have disappeared with the morning mist. "Can I go outside?" Rob asked when his father was done. "Nah," his father said. "I don't want that medicine rained off of you. It costs too much." Rob was relieved, almost, that he had to stay inside. What if he went looking for the tiger and he was not there? Rob's father cooked the macaroni and cheese for supper on the 2-burner hot plate they kept on the table next to the TV. He boiled the macaroni too long, and it stuck to the pan, so there weren't many noodles to go with the powdery cheese. "Someday," he told Rob, "you and me will have a house with a real stove, and I'll do some good cooking then." All right, guys, let's pause. I think we just learned a lot about Rob and Dad. So they were talking about Beauchamp and whether he's the richest man in the world. And I started to think to myself that I think that Rob and Dad, I'm going to put a star. I think that Rob and Dad don't have a lot of money. This is my theory. Oops. I think that Rob and Dad don't have a lot of money. Now, there were several things in this section, in this passage, that made me think that. So the first thing that made me think that Rob and Dad don't have a lot of money is Rob was asking if Beauchamp is the richest man in the world. Beauchamp, that's the man that owns the hotel, or the motel, sorry. Rob asking if Beauchamp is richest man in the world. And probably we know that somebody who owns a hotel, they might have some money, right? But they're probably not the richest man in the world. The second thing that made me think that Rob and Dad don't have a lot of money is we found out just then that they actually live in the motel. And it sounds like they don't want to live in the motel because Dad said, "Someday you and me will have a house with a real stove." And Rob actually, in the previous chapter, when Sistine asked where he lived, he said, "In the Kentucky Star." And she said, "You live in a motel?" Rob said, "It ain't permanent. It's just until we get back on our feet." So people use that phrase, "get back on our feet," when maybe they're having a hard time, like with money. Okay, so they live in the motel where Dad works. Even though they sound like they wish they had a house. And then the last thing that told me that they might not have a lot of money is when Rob asked to go outside and his dad says no because he doesn't want the medicine to get rained off of Rob's legs, and he says it costs too much. So let's write that down. The leg medicine. Dad said it costs too much. So it sounds like they kind of have to be very careful about what they're spending. All right. Oh, actually, I have one more thing I didn't even think of. So they don't even have a real stove. What they have, and you might have seen it before, like if you've gone camping or in a hotel room, what they have is like a plate that gets hot. So it's something that you kind of like plug in. But it's small and it can heat up like pots and things like his macaroni, but it's not the same as having a real stove. So let's add that. Don't have a real stove. I'm starting to think that this theory is probably correct because we have all of this evidence to back it up. Let's keep reading. Someday, he told Rob, you and me will have a house with a real stove, and I'll do some good cooking then. This is good, Rob lied. It's not good. He's just being nice. You eat all you want. I ain't that hungry, his father told him. After supper, his father fell asleep in the recliner with his head thrown back and his mouth open. He snored, and his feet, big with crooked toes, jerked and trembled. In between the snores, his stomach growled long and loud, as if he was the hungriest man in the world. Readers, so Rob lied to Dad and said that the burnt macaroni was good. And then Dad lied to Rob and he said, oh, I ain't that hungry. You eat it all, right? But then we find out Dad's stomach is growling all night long. So they're actually both lying to each other. And I wonder why. Why do you think Dad and Rob are lying to each other? Yeah, they're probably trying to protect each other's feelings, right? Neither of them want to make the other feel bad. Rob sat on his bed and started to work on carving the tiger. He had a good piece of maple, and his knife was sharp. And in his mind, he could see the tiger clearly. But something different came out of the wood. It wasn't a tiger at all. It was a person with a sharp nose and small eyes and skinny legs. It wasn't until he had started working on the dress that Rob realized he was carving Sistine. He stopped for a minute and held the wood out in front of him and shook his head in wonder. It was just like his mother had always said. You could never tell what would come out of the wood. It did what it wanted, and you just followed. So this tells me that Rob is thinking a lot about Sistine. He thought he was going to carve the tiger, but after he gets started, he subconsciously just starts to carve Sistine instead. He stayed up late working on the carving, and when he finally fell asleep, he dreamed about the tiger, only it wasn't in a cage. It was free and running through the woods, and there was something on its back, but Rob couldn't tell what it was. As the tiger got closer and closer, Rob saw that the thing was Sistine in her pink party dress. She was riding the tiger. In his dream, Rob waved to her, and she waved back at him, but she didn't stop. She and the tiger kept going past Rob, deeper and deeper into the woods. All right, that's the end of the chapter. So before we wrap up, I just want to stop and appreciate that last paragraph. So it seems like Rob is thinking a lot about Sistine. He actually ends up carving her out of wood, in the wood, instead of the tiger. And then he has this long, interesting dream about her and the tiger. So I think it's important that we notice that and write it down. So Rob is thinking a lot about Sistine. He carved her instead of the tiger, right? Which is what he intended to carve when he started. And he had a dream about her. Okay. I think we're noticing that there are some interesting things going on between Rob and Sistine and their relationship. So we're noticing that Rob acts differently around her. And now we're noticing that when Rob is home and alone in the motel, he's thinking about her too. So we're going to continue to explore that as we read on. If you need to pause this or rewind and go back to complete any of these jots, please do so. All right, see you later, readers.